In this video, learn the essential trading indicator that you may need to add to a trade strategy to make it profitable. Hi, I'm Mike Bellafiore, co-founder of S&B Capital, proprietary trading firm located in Midtown Manhattan, and I'm also the author of the trading classic, One Good Trade in the Playbook. Well, in this video, Alan McGrath, veteran Australian equities trader and well-known trading mentor, and I team to teach a developing trader how to make his trade strategy profitable.
This is a trade that I call the Momentum Inside Fiber, or the M.I.F. And I got two examples. We'll see how much time we have, if I can get through both. But the first one came with JD.com, and this was on November 15th of 2019. There was a nice setup that was happening in JD that day. So this is a 2-year chart from the highs back in January of 2018 down to the lows over here in late November, early December. And there was we were at about a 50% retracement from the highs to the lows at that particular point. JD had just reported earnings the day before. And we had a key resistance level here at about 34.68. So you can see it coincides with the 50% retracement, as well as where the stock was relatively, where it had closed the prior day. So JD is, they operate in e-commerce company, or an e-commerce company and retail infrastructure service provider in China with two main segments, their retail business and new businesses. Basically, they're the Chinese Amazon. A year earlier, they were mired in a CEO rape scandal, but all that looks to have passed. And from Steve Spencer's pre-market commentary, they beat revenues by 5%, 29% year-over-year growth. Now, I'm going to freely admit to you, Mike, at the outset, that I need to get a whole lot better at being able to read the news and figure out how to trade it best. Like, I've seen a lot of the reviews that you've done with your junior traders and your senior traders, and they know so much more about what's going on fundamentally and are able to apply it to the trade. So,
so there's a lot of different ways to look at markets, and we have a special guest in the room, all the way from Australia, Alan McGrath, who is a veteran Australian equities trader and has mentored tons of traders successfully there. We were just at lunch, and you have a little bit of a different take on how you look at markets in terms of looking at news.
Yeah, and I knew you were going to throw that one to me. I actually don't read the news. And I try to take as much a head in the sand approach as possible, in that I don't want to have my vision of the price action impaired in any way by having some sort of predisposed opinion of how the report reads. So yeah, I choose to stay very ignorant to the fundamentals of the move. I want the price, hopefully everything I need to know is in the price action. Yeah, so there's many ways to skin a cat, and I take my hat off to the people who do use fundamental knowledge to base their trades on. But I certainly find it's an anchor for me, because I make my worst trades when I have an opinion and the market has a different opinion. So I like to keep a blank canvas as much as I can.
And some of the better guys at PropX, do they all follow that thinking, or do some of them dive a little bit deeper into the fundamentals?
Oh, absolutely they do. Yeah, in our morning meetings, there's always traders that will be analysing whether a result was a beat, how it compared to market, what was expected, underlying sector strengths and weaknesses, and so on. And I'll listen to that, but I try very hard not to form an opinion on it.
thank you both, because that actually makes me feel a little bit better in some ways. But the question that I was asking then at around the pre-market hours was, at such an important technical resistance level, is all the good news priced in? So basically, I was going to be going off exactly what you just described. If the price action was going to tell me that we were going to extend higher, then I would go with that trade. Or if we were going to start to sell off, then I would go with that trade as well. So here were my stock stats, my checklist that I was going through that particular morning. I had average volume in JD is about 11 million, which is above a million, which is a check for me. Pre-market volume is about 15% of the average daily volume. I just wanted it above 10. ATR about 0.86, which is above 0.5. Gap of 4.2%, larger than my 3% on my checklist. Short float 4%. So I'm saying here the risk of short covering rallies is low. And institutional ownership 41.39%. Mike, this was something that I wanted to ask you about, but I think it's going to take too much time. You can certainly cut me off and tell me to move on. I saw you do a video the other day where you had a guy, he had over 100% institutional ownership, and you mentioned that that's the risk of institutions being short, so they could be short covering at some point during the day. But when it's so low like this, does that indicate some type of support that's going to be available for the stock, or would you want it to be in the 90s, somewhere around there?
Yeah, so if the institutional ownership is higher as opposed to lower, that is going to make a difference potentially in whether or not a stock that sold off a bunch gets supported, or whether or not a stock that has good news is supported, or in this case, whether or not a stock that's trying to reclaim where it was in the past starts to catch a bid from some more big money traders. In your case, when you're trading something like JD, I mean, the biggest mover of JD recently, if you were to ask me, what's the big picture for what moves JD recently, it would be the U.S.-China trade war.
Right.
And it's a really good proxy for trading the U.S.-China trade war. It's been, one of the go-to stocks that you might want for exposure to China when news is good or news is bad, long or short. Yeah. Certainly one of the better movers. So, yeah, I mean, this is institutional ownership it's a little bit more on the lower side. We want to be factoring that into our decisions. Okay. So you have long-term technicals identified, okay? And you got your short-term technicals identified as well.
Yep, that's
okay.
Coming up on the next couple of charts.
Yeah, and I'll just sort of say, because I know I'll get questions about this, so we like to put variables together to make trades. We say this quite often, which is there's lots of different ways to trade, and so for us, we're going to want to know what the news is, because one of the differences between the U.S. and Australia is that we have more algorithms. One of the differences between the U.S. and Australia is it's harder for us to read the tape these days than it used to be, and than it would be in the Aussie markets. But there are traders that do not want to know the news, do not read the news, would trade poorer if they knew the news. We teach you guys at the start to look at the news and put that together when you're trying to make certain trades. We are looking for things that are going to be a little bit more directional. The news gives us a way to identify some of those stocks that are going to be the Jake charts up, really, really strong, or the Jake charts down, really, really weak. If we've got a really, really positive news catalyst that's unexpected, that can bring in a lot of buying. If we have a really, really weak news catalyst downside, that can bring in a lot of selling. And so, no right answer to a lot of this stuff, but I think a good way to start for you to be developing your playbook. There'll be one of you in this room who is just going to be a flat-out scalper. And if you're going to just be a flat-out scalper, it's fine if you don't want to know all the news. If you're going to be a swing trader, if you're going to be some sort of hybrid swing trader, you're going to want to put the news into your variables, for the most part.
So this is the long-term technical analysis. I already showed a picture of this on the two previous slides. Just identifying the key resistance level at 34.68 right now. Prior long-term support. And what did I have? Oh, and just the 50% retracement from the all-time highs to the lows, from 58.68 down to 19.21. So next slide's got the short-term technicals. So here was the prior 52-week high, support, which is now resistance in the pre-market at 34.09. Here's that long-term resistance level that I had identified. Aftermarket high resistance at about 36. And then once the institutions started coming in at about 7, which is what Steve has been saying in Trader DNA, we had some pretty good resistance around 35.39, 35.50 area. So there's my short-term technicals. So now, there's my general trade management for the momentum inside fiber. On a risk basis, my stop is going to be, my daily stop for just getting away from my desk is going to be about 1% of my equity. And my single trade risk right now, I'm keeping very low at 0.1% of my equity as I continue to go through the DNA. For this particular trade, my focus is just on the first 60 minutes of trade using 5-minute chart. My setup, I got criteria 1, I need the first 2 bars to close in the same price direction relative to the VWAP. Second criteria, I want an inside bar, and it doesn't have to be the second 5-minute bar that prints. It could be the fourth 5-minute bar that prints. Just need an inside bar that's going to be less than 75% the size of its mother bar. And on my trade entry, I'm going to initiate it upon breaking the inside bar in the direction that price was moving. My stop's going to be 50% the size of the inside bar. Right now I'm shooting for a target of 4R. And management at this time, which was about a month ago, looking to add, I wasn't necessarily at that level yet. I just wanted to get comfortable with this particular setup and see how it was going to start working for me. And if stopped out, I would look to re-enter at the same level, because what I had seen when I was just back testing it, it was only for about a couple weeks that I was back testing it, looking at trades like this, where if a stop out occurred, re-entering at the exact same level with the exact same stop and the exact same target actually ended up producing some pretty nice results. One of the other things I was going to do when managing this trade is pay close attention to the flip, what I'm calling the flip, which is the switch from the hourly 9:30 bar to the hourly 10:30 bar. And then just in general, just to let the trade play out.
Alan, any thoughts? If you want to learn 3 real-world setups that our traders use, including the simple setup that we teach all of our new traders and the setup that turned one of our traders into a 7-figure big money earner, check out the free webinar that we're currently running. Just go ahead and click the link that should be appearing right now at the top right-hand corner of your screen. That's going to open up this free registration page in the new window, so don't worry, you're not going to lose this video. You're going to learn more in a couple of hours from this trading workshop than from years of online education.
Not really, except for me, given we're dealing with a catalyst on market open, I'm probably waiting for the market to give me the signal to add rather than a set bar or a set pattern to set up. I'm just waiting for a discretionary moment where, I feel that one side's getting in control. I might want the confirmation by a break of your 2 bars or whatever your individual setup is. But I'm really looking for, and again, it's different for everyone, but I'm just really looking for a sign that it's the right time to take that trade. I'm a very discretionary trader though, so I can't comment too much on someone that has really solid, and I really love that you have really solid rules, but it's certainly a different way of looking at things than I have. And the same with targets as well. My target is when the market's telling me that the trade's getting tired, and I might start to phase out once that trade's feeling tired. I don't want to get to 3.8R and not take any off the table because I wanted 4 if the market's telling me that's enough. So I want to listen. I want to have some guidelines, but then I want to be willing to amend those guidelines if the market's telling me to.
Yeah. So, Alan, are you talking about getting additional confirmation from the overall market, or just from this particular stock that I would be focusing on?
From the particular stock, and probably in this case because you're dealing with a catalyst that involves a China trade deal, I'd be looking at what other stocks that are affected by that deal are doing as well.
Yeah. Excellent. Thank you.
So you're going to look for more confirmation from the tape, from the level 2, from the order flow.
Yep.
you're going to want to feel that the stock is strong or weak
Yes.
from
definitely.
the level two, from the order flow,
Yep.
a little bit more than the criteria here.
Yes. But that doesn't mean that's right or wrong. That's just how I trade.
Yep.
No, exactly what you're saying has actually been playing out for me the past 3 weeks as I'm not a tape reader at all right now, but what I'm finding just by watching the stock trade is I'm getting more information by watching it than sticking to my, set rules that I have in place. There were 2 trades today that I could have taken off at about a 2R or a 2.5R, but I didn't because I was sticking to this 4R target and ended up losing on them. So thank you very much, Alan. I appreciate that. All right, so on to the specific trade management for this guy. Initially opened the first 5-minute bar here, opens below VWAP, as does the second one, and it just so happened that the second one did go inside of the first one. So we also, that indicated to me a potential trend down day. Second bar went inside. The size of it was 32 cents. The mother bar was 81 cents. So that my trade criteria was met. And then I shorted at the break of first inside bar, the second 5-minute bar. Once it got below there, that's when I got in. My target was down here at 33.99 with my stop up here at 34.84. So as the trade started to play out, I got a nice big candle down on the fourth 5-minute bar and a little bit more extension on the fifth. And this support here, that was a prior 52-week high at 34.09, looked like it was starting to hold. 34.06 was the low on that one. So we started to get a bit of a retracement coming back up here. And then there was consolidation. These 3 small 5-minute bars actually ended up being an inside 15-minute bar. And they are below VWAP, and I certainly could have added at this point. But I guess I mentioned to you, Mike, in my email when I initially emailed you about this, I was just nervous about having a positive example to show you. And also I wasn't at the time good at adding and reading the action of what was going on. But in hindsight, this is what I saw here at this point with these 3 consolidation bars, because then there was another nice breakdown. It did put in a bit of a higher low compared to the 34.06, but it didn't put in a higher high, which gave me a little bit of confirmation that maybe my target was going to be hit. So then the 34.06 support was broken.
All right, so tell me why you get short. So 3, short at 34.67 below long-term resistance. What is the specific reason why you are short?
The reason why, because it met my trade criteria. The price action met my trade criteria.
All right, go back to that and explain that to me again.
So my trade criteria setups, I wanted the first 2 bars to close in the same direction, price direction relative to VWAP. So the first bar, second bar, they both close below VWAP. And then my second trade criteria is I wanted an inside bar less than 75% the size of the mother bar, which is what I had here with the second bar. 32 cents, the mother bar was 81 cents.
For this setup to actually work, what are you going to need to add to this criteria? The trade cannot work as presently constructed. What do you need to add to this? You need a volume indicator for this.
Oh, okay. I hadn't thought of that. What are you looking for with regards to volume?
Well, you want increasing volume. You want to know. Go back to your trade slide. So you want to know that these 2 bars that are closing in the same direction are meaningful. And for you to know that these bars are meaningful, you need to confirm that with elevated volume. And so there's lots of different ways you can come up with you're seeing additional volume with these first 2 bars, but you're going to need to add that.
Yeah.
And so, in short, what I mean by that is those 2 bars need to be meaningful, and they only are meaningful if there is additional volume in those 2 bars as compared to other types of moves. You could just have 2 bars that are, in this case, red with very, very light volume, and wouldn't mean anything. Right? That's what you're trying to say, Jake?
True.
Yes.
Yes, we're all trying to say that. All right, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so where I had left off was at number 7 here, where the 3406 support was broken. Came within 3 cents of my target at 33.99, and so I like I mentioned before, just wanted to have a positive example. So I actually moved my stop to the top of the 1 minute bar. I switched to a 1 minute chart on this, and ended up getting stopped out at 34.16 roughly for a 3-hour gain. But what ended up happening, the way in which the trade ended up playing out, was there was a nice move below that 34.06 that ended up with a hammer down here in the bottom. And that's a point where I could have covered some right there. And then I got for number 9 here, I could have re-entered either on this shooting star or this shooting star here. And then as the trade continued to play out, as we went into the afternoon, I've heard you mention before, Mike, on other videos where you say, look for the real move. Well, here was the real move where we got a nice push down here in price, not necessarily in volume, but now that you guys are mentioning it, here's a bit of elevated volume as you got a nice collapse in price here, and this would have been a real nice spot to close the entire trade out.
This is the Jake chart. And so when we see Jake charts like that, Jake charts are directional, clean, smooth, and when we go back and review these charts, we want to try and figure out why that was. Why was it so clean? Why were you so right to be trading this? I didn't hear that yet from your presentation. And maybe you sort of did this. Why do you think this trade works so nicely?
Well, there was the additional catalyst coming from the overall market, where we had the China news, where the trade deal was in jeopardy. But then the other thing that I can postulate at this time, I don't have confirmation right now, but that the news for JD was priced in, and we actually had a good technical level where selling could occur.
What you can't do is walk away from a day like this and say, well, the first 2 bars closed negatively, therefore the trade worked. That isn't the takeaway from this trade. All right?
Got it.
A better trade is we've got a news catalyst, we've got a negative news catalyst for this particular product. We've got a particular strategy that works well with elevated volume on this particular trade, and price is confirming that this is really working. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So the trade is, so a good trade is a news catalyst with two clear red bars in the same direction below VWAP on elevated volume. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
Okay. That's a better trade.
Got it.
That's something for you to study, for you to measure, for you to back test. Maybe it'll work for you, maybe it won't, but that is a trade worth study.
Overall, then, as I continue to go through DNA, right now I'm setting my rules to be rather concrete. So you're suggesting then to have more discretion.
No, I like you having concrete rules. I think that's a good place to start. I think Alan's point is excellent, which is as you get more experience, you're going to make a decision as to whether or not you are more of a field trader or whether or not you need to be more of a systematic trader. And so good to start with organization and then be cognizant of how you want to attack markets. There are going to be some people like Shark, for instance. Shark is a field trader. Shark does not want to be a systematic trader. That takes him away from his particular cognitive strengths. Okay? Austin would be more in the systematic, organized thinker type of way, and so he's not going to be totally systematic, but he's going to want more structure behind his trades, where that just wouldn't work for Shark. Both of them have excellent success looking at markets a little bit differently.
There's a whole heap of space in between those as well, And that's where it's important to find where you fit. And for me, if you go back to your 5-minute chart, was it, of your trade? If you're in that trade and you're looking for reasons to stay in it, there's a couple there. And one, almost right at the beginning, when it dumped and it almost got to your target, if that had powered straight back through the VWAP and stopped you out, you were so close to your target and you take none off and it turns into a loser, like you said. So that's where I'm questioning. My target was there, which meant I had a feeling that could be a level it might bounce from. It's bounced from just above there, so should I take some off at least? Your highlighters there is exactly it for me, the first point that suggests I am on the right side of this trade because it failed at the VWAP almost perfectly. So is that a spot in future that I can add to this short, especially if I've taken some off near the bottom? Is this a point I can add because it's a little bit of confirmation with low risk? If I add a little bit as it fails at the VWAP, I can always cover that if it breaks back above it. But there's one point for me. And the other point is you've got your two arrows there that you support at 34.06 and the next one that makes your high or low. When it bounces at 0.89 on your slide, so if you go across as it bounces where that big arrow is at dot 0.8 and 9 on your, that level where it bounces to is basically at where that previous support was. So the previous support on the 5-minute, that yellow line that's held a couple of times early, has now provided resistance. So it's another little bit of confirmation that you're on the right side of this trade. Previous support often becomes resistance. It's become resistance almost again to the dot, and there's another little bit of you're collecting little pieces of information that tell you you're still on the right side of that trade.
One of the things, Mike, that I really liked, and thank you, Alan, that I'm going to incorporate now in my journal daily is the question that you just asked me, which is why did this trade work? That's the question that I've been asking myself when I go to do my journal at the end of the day. So that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, particularly when the stocks are really clean and strong, really clean and weak. Those are trades really, really worth studying. All right, good.
So on my review here, watching S&B traders go through this exercise online and YouTube has been eye-opening. Obviously, doing it with you guys is even more eye-opening, and to have Alan here as well, adding additional commentary is phenomenal. So for me to actually go through this for the first time has been incredibly impactful. I'm unwinding so many bad habits that I developed over the years. It's given me the opportunity to think about executing trades very differently than in the past, taking my focus away from just quote unquote making money now or trading my P&L, which is a huge problem that I've had in the past. So I got a lot more to learn. I just finished module 5 in DNA, and I anticipate incorporating level 2 data into my analysis as I get further into it. About a month ago, an additional trade idea that could have come out of this was JD had the potential for a good second day play if that 52-week high resistance held, and it could have moved down to 32. And the next couple of days, it actually did have a nice move down past 32. I hadn't taken the trade, but that was a potential that was there.
All right, great. Appreciate you sharing that with us. Dr. MTV, thank you.
Oh, thank you, Mike, and the rest of you guys. Alan, everybody, appreciate it.
A special thank you from S&B to veteran trader and mentor Alan McGrath for helping us teach this developing trader and S&B DNA student. Now it's your turn. Which effective trading technique discussed in this video are you going to implement into your trading? Are you going to pay close attention to volume when designing a trade strategy? Or are you going to incorporate reading the tape like Alan and S&B does with your trading? Let us know by leaving a comment below right now.